Dafeng Jingzaofu, prison. Su Jian woke up quietly, smelling the damp, rancid smell in the air, which caused slight discomfort and stomach acid. What's the matter with this stinky smell? The Erha at home is running on the bed and shit. According to the degree of smokers, I am afraid it was not caused by my head. Su Qian has a dog at home, the breed husky, commonly known as Erha. I have been drifting north for 10 years, I am lonely, this person, lonely for a long time. It is inevitable that I will want to raise a dog for comfort and entertainment, not physically. Opened his eyes and looked around. Next time, Su Qian was stunned. The stone walls were built with 3 large square windows. He was lying on the cold tattered straw mat. The sunlight shone on his chest through the square windows, and dust floated in the beam. Where am I? Su Qian meditated for a moment in the confusion of doubting life, and then he really doubted life. I crossed. Frenzy memories came surging, and he didn't give him a chance to react at all, inserted into the brain forcefully, and flowed quickly. Su Qian, named Ninjian, was a arrestor of Chang'an County under the jurisdiction of Jingzhou Mansion of Dafeng dynasty. The monthly salary is 2 taels of silver and 1 stone. His father was a veteran who died in the Shanghai battle 19 years ago. Later, his mother also died of illness. Thinking of this, Su Qian was a little relieved. It is well known that it is not easy for people whose parents have died. I didn't expect to work hard, but still can't escape the fate of being a policeman. Su Qian had a toothache. In his previous life, he graduated from the police academy, successfully entered the system, and won a golden rice bowl. However, although Su Qian took the path his parents chose for him, his heart was not in the profession of public servants. He likes to be unrestrained, free, like drunk fans, like Ji Xianlin's words in his diary. Then resigned brazenly and went to sea for business. But why am I in jail? He tried to digest his memory, and soon understood his situation. Su Qian was raised by his second uncle since he was a child. Because he was practicing martial arts all the time, he would eat more than 100 taels of silver every year, so his aunt was not pleased. After reaching the peak of refinement at the age of 18, he stagnated. Under pressure from his aunt, he moved out of Su's house to live alone. Through my uncle's relationship, I got involved in a quick job in the yamen. I had a good life, who would have thought? 3 days ago, the second uncle of the 7th grade green robe who was on duty at Udayway escorted a batch of tax money to the household department. There was an accident on the way and the tax money was lost. Exactly 150,000 taels of silver. The ruling and the opposition shook, and the sage was furious and ordered himself. Su Pingzi beheaded 5 days later. The relatives of the 3 races were sitting together, the males were sent to the frontiers, and the female relatives were sent to the Jiaofang division. As Su Pingzi's nephew, he was relieved of his post of arrest and sent to Jingzhou Mansion prison. 2 days. In 2 more days, he will be exiled to a bleak and desolate border, and spend the rest of his life in toil. The start is in mode. Su Qian got a cold back, and his heart was cold. The world is under the rule of a feudal dynasty, and there is no human rights. Where is the border? Desolate, bad weather, most of the prisoners sent to the border will not live for 10 years. Many more people died on the way due to various accidents and diseases before reaching the border. Thinking of this, Su Qian's scalp exploded, chilling. System. There was a moment of silence, and Su Qian's sound of temptation sounded from the silent prison. The system ignored him. System. Dad, you come out. Su Qian's voice was anxious. Is silent. There is no system, there is no system. This means that he can hardly change the status quo. 2 days later, he will put on shackles and be sent to the border. With his body, he should not die on the way. But this is not a good thing. I was squeezed out of the labor force in my career as a tool, and finally died. Is terrible, terrible. Su Qian's beautiful fantasy about traveling through ancient times shattered like a bubble, and some only had anxiety and fear. I have to find a way to save myself, I can't just keep a dog like this. Su Qian paced around in the small prison, like an ant on a hot pot, like a beast falling into a trap, thinking hard about countermeasures. I am the pinnacle of refinement, and I have a strong physical fitness, but in this world, I belong to the unyielding silver, and it is impossible to escape from prison. By clan and friends? The Su family is not a big clan, the clans are scattered all over the place, and a full 150,000 taels of tax and silver have been robbed. Who dares to intercede at this point? According to the great law, if you make up for your merits, you will be exempt from capital crimes. Unless the silver is recovered. Su Qian's eyes lit up suddenly, as if someone on the verge of drowning grabbed the straw. He graduated from a serious police school with rich theoretical knowledge, clear logic, strong reasoning ability, and he has read countless cases. Maybe we can try to solve the case, recover the money, and make meritorious deeds. But then, the light in his eyes dimmed. If you want to solve a case, you must first look at the file and understand the details of the case. Investigate and solve the case afterwards. Now he is in a deep prison, and told him that every day should not be called the ground, he will be sent to the border 2 days later. No solution. Su Qian sat on the ground, his eyes lost. He was drunk in the bar yesterday, and he woke up in prison, thinking that he might have died from alcohol poisoning before crossing. God has rewarded him with the opportunity to travel, not to make him live again, but to think he died too easily. In ancient times, distribution was a severe sentence second only to the death penalty. Although I was beaten up by society in my last life and lived in a peaceful and prosperous world, you said it would be great to be reborn. If nothing else, I stole my parents' savings and went to buy a house. Then cooperated with my mother, interrupting the hand of the old man who loves stocks, making him not a leak. At this time, the sound of the chain moving at the end of the dark corridor, it should be that the door opened. Then came the sound of footsteps. A jailer led a handsome scholar with a haggard face and stopped in front of Su Qian's cell. The jailer glanced at the scholar, half a column of incense time. The scholar bowed his hands to the jailer, and after watching the jailer leave, he turned and faced Su Qian. The scholar is wearing a moon-white robe, with long black hair tied to the host, looks very handsome, with sword eyebrows and star eyes, and thin lips. Su Qian's memory of this person appeared in his mind. Su Jia Erlang, Su New Year. Second uncle's biological son, Su Qian's cousin, will be held in this autumn. Su New Year looked directly at him calmly. The soldiers who escorted you to the border took me 300 taels. This is the only money left in our family. You can go with peace of mind. There will be no surprises on the way. What about you? Su Qian said these words in a ghostly manner. Yu reading www.yuyuganshu.com. He remembered that the relationship between the original owner and this cousin was not good. Because his aunt hates his relationship, except for his second uncle, everyone in the Su family doesn't want to see Su Qian much. At least the cousin and cousin wouldn't be too close to him. In addition, in the memory of the original owner, this cousin is still a strong mouth king who is good at fragrant mouth. Su New Year said impatiently, I have been expelled from fame, but there is no need for hair distribution because of the guardian of the academy teacher. Just take care of yourself. Go to the border, temper your temper, and live a year or a year. Su New Year went to the prestigious Bailu Academy in Kyoto, and he was highly regarded, and he was a newcomer. Therefore, after the second uncle's accident, he was not sent to prison, but he was not allowed to leave Kyoto, and he had been running around for many days. Su Qian was silent. He didn't think that Su New Year would be better than himself. I am afraid that he would not only get rid of his fame, he would also have to become a lowly citizen. And, 2 days later, the Su family's female family members will be sent to the Jiaofeng division and be abused. Su Nuye is a scholar, how can he still have the face to live in Beijing? Perhaps being sent to frontier is the better choice. Su Qian moved in his heart, took a few steps forward, and clasped the iron fence with both hands. Do you want to kill yourself? Out of control, sadness surged in my heart, I didn't even know him. Su Nuye's expressionless face rolled over his sleeves. What do you do with you? After a pause, his gaze shifted slightly down a few inches. Instead of staring at his cousin, his expression turned soft, live. After that, he stepped away resolutely. Wait! Su Qian reached out the fence and grabbed his sleeve. Su Nuye paused and looked at him silently. Can you get the file? The file for the lost tax and silver case. Su Nuye frowned. Why do you want this? I want to solve the case, Su Qian said solemnly. I want to know the story of the crime, and I will understand it even if I die. Otherwise I will not be reconciled. Directly speaking about solving the case, Su Zinian probably thinks that his head is whatless, so Su Qian changed his opinion. After all, the original Su Qian was a persistent and stubborn character. Su Nuye pondered for a while and said, I have read the dossier, so I can tell you. The case is too big for the Su family these days, no one dared to help. In desperation, Su Zinian changed his mind and tried to break the situation in terms of recovering tax and silver. Relying on the original contacts of the Su family and the academy, as well as the management of money, Su Nuye bought the staff of Jingzhou Mansion and copied the files for him. But he has no experience in criminal judgment or investigation, so he has no choice but to give up. Su Qian raised his hand and interrupted, You go to write it down, the dictation is meaningless. All the details of the case are in the text. If you need to consider, chew, and allocate a part of the energy to listen, your brain will not be able to calmly think and analyze. Su Qian's logical reasoning ability has always been one of the best in his previous life, and he is a leader in his grade. Before the replacement, Su Zinian would not pay attention to him, thinking that the brothers had a goodbye this time, maybe it was a farewell. He agreed to his brother's last request and whispered, Wait a moment. Quickly left. The sound of footsteps disappeared in the corridor, and Su Qian sat down with his back against the fence, feeling confused. He is not sure to turn the game over. It is a desire to solve the case, and it is true that he is unwilling. There is only one way to save myself that I can think of. I have to try it and struggle to death. In modern criminal investigation methods, crime scene investigation, surveillance, and autopsy are three essential components. No one died in the case of missing tax and silver, and there was no monitoring in ancient times, and he was in prison, and he had no conditions to contact the above three elements. Fortunately, the file can restore the crime scene to a certain extent. While digesting the memory of the original owner, he forced himself to get rid of all negative emotions. Only a calm brain can have clear thinking and complete rigorous reasoning. It's dead or alive, it's the next step. He murmured. The time for a stick of incense gradually passed. Su Zinian hurried back and handed him a few wet rice papers. The time is up, I have to go. Su Nuye hesitated and said, You take care of yourself. Su Qian didn't say a word, his eyes were already attracted by the handwriting on the rice paper. Time is rushed, and the handwriting on the paper is cursive. If Su Qian hadn't read the private school for a few years, he would not recognize these ghost symbols at all. Reading is still useful, because it's mainly an illiterate, the end is the end of flowers. Su Qian laughed at herself. The process of the missing tax and silver case is like this. In addition to the incident, there are confessions from passers-by collected by Jingzhou Mansion and confessions from soldiers who participated in the escort. In a series of confessions, Su Qian noticed a sentence outlined with a red cinnabar pen, Monster is haunting. Monsters make trouble. Su Qian's pupils shrank, and his heart sank to the bottom. Jingzhoufu, the back hall. After 3 consecutive days of rushing and busy, the three main persons responsible for the missing tax and silver case gathered together. Jing Zhao Fuyin Chen Hangong, holding a white porcelain blue and white teacup in his hand, gently knocking on the edge of the cup, his face solemn. The official fourth-grade official who wears a scarlet robe and embroiders a cloud geese size lightly, there are 2 days left. The Holy Spirit ordered me to wait for the tax and silver to be recovered before Su Pingzi beheaded. 2 adults, we must hurry up. The 2 in Chen Fuyan's mouth were middle-aged men in black uniforms and black cloaks. The bridge of the nose was high, the eye sockets were slightly sunken, and the pupils were light brown. Half of southern barbarian ancestry. Another girl with an oval face in a yellow dress has picturesque eyebrows and a curly skin, looking radiant. She is holding a sugar cane in her hand, a deerskin bag and a gossip feng shui plate hanging around her waist, and a pair of small boots embroidered with moire under the skirt. Swing and swing. These 2 assisted in handling the case. The middle-aged man named Li Yuchen was born in an organization that was extremely jealous of Dafeng officials, gangmen. The organization Beat Gen Gren is engaged in reconnaissance, arrest, and interrogation activities. They are also involved in collecting military information and instigating against enemy generals. It does not belong to the 6th Department, nor does it belong to the military system. It is the intelligence organization of the royal family, and it is also a guillotine hanging over Begwin's head. All officials in Dafeng have heard one sentence: don't do bad things during the day, and don't be afraid to call guards at night. And the girl in the yellow skirt is a member of Sishinjian, and she is not a low-level disciple of Sishinjian. The middle-aged man with a silver gong embroidered on his chest glanced at the bagasse that the girl in the yellow skirt was spreading around his feet, frowned, his palms swirled, and the airflow rolled, gathering the bagasse in one place. The middle-aged man nodded slightly, revealing a flash of joy. Then he replied to Chen Fuyan with a heavy face, "This case is very weird. Maybe our direction is wrong." Where did Master Li's words begin? Chen Fuyan frowned. The analysis of the case to the present, basically locked the monsters and robbed the tax bank. Our time is running out, and what we should do now is to catch messy monsters as soon as possible. Don't think about these messy things. Chen Fuyan said. In recent years, the treasury has been empty, and there have been famines in various places. 150,000 taels of tax silver is equivalent to a year's tax revenue for an ordinary county. His Majesty's anger is understandable. I didn't have any money, you dropped the chain, so angry. Chen Fuyan took the case conscientiously, and the burden on his shoulders has made him unable to eat well recently. The middle-aged man shook his head without arguing, and said, "What new gains does Su Pingzi have?" Chen Fuyan shook his head, "A martial artist will only keep innocent, he doesn't even know how he lost his taxes." The girl in the yellow skirt said lightly, "I have watched his qi and didn't lie." Li Yuchen and Chen Fuyan nodded, and did not continue talking about the person. As a criminal, Su Pingzi was the first to be investigated, tortured, interpersonal relations and financial situation, etc., were all traced. Yu read www.yuyuganshu.com and cooperated with SI Tianjian's Qi technique, and the suspicion has now been eliminated. Of course, the loss of tax and bank account, Su Pingzi's dereliction of duty, the death penalty is inevitable. The middle-aged man and Chen Fuyan had serious faces and a heavy heart. Only the yellow-skirt girl with the lightest pressure, gnawing sugarcane carelessly. At this time, there was the sound of footsteps, and a government servant hurried in, holding a small bamboo tube in his right hand, and a paper bag of butter in his left hand, which contained a big steaming meat bun. Yi handed the bamboo tube over first. The girl in the yellow skirt didn't answer, as if with Xing's bright eyes, she glanced at the big meat bag. The yeoman changed the order of interest, and the girl in the yellow skirt chewed up the big meat bag with joy, then took the bamboo tube, pulled out a piece of paper, and read, "My people said, 20 miles along the way no evil spirits were observed in Hanoi, and there were no traces on the shore." Snapped. The depressed atmosphere finally exploded. Chen Fuyan slapped the table angrily, and his face was green with anger. Where can I take 150,000 taels of silver? It has to go ashore, it has to go ashore. It's been 3 days, even the trace of the other party did not find. Damn it, wherever monsters dare to intercept my big tax money, the official will call it annihilation. Tax silver can't catch up, he has to take the blame, and the emperor won't care about his grievances, but if he sits in this position, he has to take the blame. The officialdom is like that. It's hard to climb up, but it's easy to fall. Middle-aged Li Yuchen let out a sigh of relief and resumed the topic just now. Could it be that we are investigating in the wrong direction? It may not be the work of a monster. Chen Fuyan looked at him, took a deep breath, and suppressed the irritation in his heart. It's not a monster. How does the demon wind come from? How can silver enter the river and disappear out of thin air? How could it blow up water waves several feet high and shake both sides of the bank? Crack! No one can answer this question. Li Yuchen said, what is the reason for the monster stealing tax and silver? Chen Fuyan slightly pondered, monsters never ask their hearts, do whatever they want, and investigate the reasons, but they are just looking for troubles. The girl in the yellow skirt had different opinions. Human flesh is not more delicious? Well, wait a minute, I will finish the steamed buns first. After eating 2 big dumplings, her face turned into Xiaolongbao, she swallowed hard, and drank a sip of tea. Then she continued the topic just now, and she could talk about human affairs freely. Demons do everything without scruples, and silver may not be alive and attractive in their eyes. Even if they want silver, stealing or robbery is safer than stealing tax. In Dafeng, Kyoto, the risk of stealing tax money on the street is too great. Chen Fuyan nodded, it is reasonable, and it is not ruled out that it was instigated by others. Li Yuchen narrowed his eyes, then who would instruct the monsters to steal tax money? What is the reason? Why must it be this batch of tax money? It must be 150,000 taels. Let's think about it this way, the master behind the scenes needs a huge sum of money, but he can't make too much noise. To be precise, you can't collect money unscrupulously. Chen Fuyan's heart moved. So I focused on tax payment. The girl in the yellow skirt pursed her bright lips. The tax and silver route is random, and it is temporarily decided by Su Pingzi, one of the 100 households of Yudea Wei, but the monster can ambush in the river in advance. In the team, it is very likely that there will be an internal response. Li Yuchen said, glanced at it. Chen Fuyan, go to Yunlu Academy and find Confucian experts to ask your heart. The girl in the yellow skirt squinted at him, are you looking down on our Sishan supervisor's ability to watch the air? I have already said that the soldiers escorting the tax and silver at the scene have no idea. The train of thought stuck again, and the 3 of them were silent for a while. The air suddenly became quiet. Li Yuchen looked down at the file, and Chen Fuyan sighed. The girl in the yellow skirt fiddled with the feng shui plate around her waist, thinking that she had to leave Jingzhou mansion before sunset and enter the palace to find the princess for a meal. The craftsmanship of the palace chefs is first class in the world. Compared to them, the girl in the yellow skirt named Kwei is more of a guest and assists in handling cases. She has no officials and no job. Although she is one of the persons in charge of the case, she does not need to bear much responsibility. Chen Fuyan's eyes moved slightly, and he tentatively said, the case is progressing slowly at the moment, and time is urgent. It is really anxious. Li, why don't you go and ask Wei Gong? The middle-aged man squinted at him and snorted, you civil servants have the Beijing police, and we also have the police officers. To be honest, this is the assessment that Wei Gong gave me. Chen Fuyan smiled bitterly, this case can't be solved, I'm afraid I can't keep the position under my butt. The ruling and the opposition are watching us. The 2 looked at each other in silence, with a solemn atmosphere. If it's a monster, then I can't do anything. Su Qian turned pale, and felt the deep malice of God. There are monsters in this world. The monsters have existed since ancient times, hunting and devouring each other with humans. In the 100,000 mountains in southern Xinjiang, there is a kingdom of 10,000 demons, which is the largest settlement of demons. 500 years ago, under the leadership of Buddhism, the Western countries declared war on the 10,000 demon kingdoms in southern Xinjiang. They fought a long war before and after, and finally flattened the demon kingdom. The history books named this battle Jiazi Dang Yao. Since then, the demonic luck has been damaged and gradually declined. From then on, Buddhism soared into the sky, and Buddhism prospered. Using Su Qian's later knowledge to understand that humanity has won the battle for the top of the food chain. If the tax and silver are a demon, then he can only save himself and the Su family by recovering the money. As an unyielding silver at the pinnacle of refinement, Su Qian felt that he couldn't make a comeback. In the autumn season, the weather is wet and cold, and Su Qian is sweating all over. He is scared. Incorporates the memory of the original owner, knowing that it is impossible to escape from prison at all, and knowing that this society where the imperial power is supreme, human rights are too weak. Life and death are all in the thought of others. I also imagined that I would go back to the ancient copy of poems and pretend to be forced, and I felt very cool. The reality slapped him severely. I will be beaten severely by the society after crossing. No, this is just a guess, this is just the guess of the Jingzhou Mansion Yamen, I can't be affected by their guess, I will do it myself, I will analyze it myself, I can still rescue it, I can also rescue it. The strong desire to survive made him calm down quickly, and his logic became rigorous and clear again. Why do monsters steal tax money? Isn't human flesh fragrant? Even if you are short of money, there is no need to stare at tax money. I heard from the book that the demon girls of the monster race are all charming and exquisite. I don't know if there is a cat and a bitch. Slap. Su Qian slapped himself, reasoning. The most important thing in reasoning is to do subtraction, to list the clues one by one and sort them out. Otherwise, it is a ball of yarn, and it will only get messy with the more thought. The two most obvious clues to the tax and silver case: demon wind. 2. Tax and silver exploded after falling into the river. Except for Wufu, all major cultivation systems have the ability to blow the demon wind. Therefore, clue 1 can only be used as a proof of the participation of practitioners and cannot give more detailed goals. The suspicion of the second uncle who was born in Takeo is alleviated, although it is not ruled out that he conspired with others. The explosion of clue 2 is an unreasonable doubt. It is normal for high-ranking practitioners to fight and trigger an explosion. But in this case of missing tax and silver, there was no fighting by force, so the explosion was unreasonable. Unless it has to explode. Su Qian murmured. In the major cultivation systems, what occupations require explosions to achieve their goals? Su Qian thought for a moment, but couldn't figure it out, and then he realized that he and Jing Zhaofu had made the same mistake. Jing Zhaofu's thinking went wrong from the very beginning. According to the most obvious clue in the case, it was judged that the murderer was a monster, and then he ran on this road and never returned. This is not wrong, the problem lies in this judgment is too sloppy. Su Qian is still dominated by modern people's thinking and experience in previous lives, although he incorporates memories. He prefers to squeeze the cocoon on the dossier, to chew the details that are not easily detectable, and then make a conclusion. I can't figure out this path for the time being, so I'll change my mind and break through from other places. I will first rule out the chaos caused by monsters, assuming this is a carefully planned, man-made incident. Then, he will definitely leave a flaw in the case. Local's law of material exchange tells us that whenever a crime is committed, direct or indirect traces will be left on the scene. All kinds of traces can be divided into two categories. The specifics are not clearly remembered. They should be hand and footprints, fingerprints, traces of carts and horses, traces of tools and equipment, etc. The flaws are not in the two most conspicuous clues, but in these various traces. According to the file description, Su Qian recounted the process of escorting taxes and silvers with his uncle in his mind. Adrenaline is secreted wildly, and brain cells are highly active. If pheromones can mimic, they are like koi in the pool, vying for food frantically, and the water is boiling. Repeatedly reviewing again and again, all kinds of information and clues on the dossier gather, his brain is like a high-speed CPU. With the patchwork of various information, the case became clearer and clearer. Unknowingly, Su Qian felt that he had entered a certain state. His soul flew lightly, broke through the mortal body, broke through the building, and came to the sky above Kyoto. Time seems to be going back in time. The east is faintly and the sun is about to rise. Su Pingzi led a group of tough soldiers to the tax and bank to the household. At this time, it was a quarter of a century, when we walked to Guangnan Street, a demon wind blew, and the horses were frightened and rushed into the river. Boom! The river exploded and the turbid waves emptied. The explosion seemed to be resounding in Su Qian's heart. He kicked his legs reflexively and came to his senses. There was exhaustion in his eyes, but his face was full of excitement and ecstasy. I know, ha ha ha, I solved the mystery. Su Qian laughed wildly and beat the fence hard. Come here, come. The jailer in charge of guard was startled, carrying a fire stick, and cursing, noisy, too long, right. Hit the fence hard to scare Su Qian. Su Qian took a step back and let go of the hand holding the fence, so as not to be knocked off his finger. He said solemnly, I want to see Fu Yin. A prisoner, see Fu Yin, and don't take a picture of yourself. The jailer laughed angrily, and put the fire stick into the fence to stab Su Qian. Su Qian backed away again. Do you still dare to hide? The jailer touched the key on his waist and grinned and said, I discounted your leg today. I have important clues about the tax and bank robbery. I want to see Fu Yin. If the case is delayed, you will be responsible. Su Qian stared at him. The jailer's face became stiff. Yu reading www.yuyuganshu.com. Niatang, the girl who finished eating the meat buns, continued to nibble the sugar cane, and sometimes took out a few candied fruit from the deerskin pouch and ate them with them. Was sad and heartless on the other. Your Majesty ordered us to solve the case within 5 days. This is because the time has been too long, and the tax and silver will probably never be back. Chen Fuyan paced back and forth in the hall, and he couldn't sit still, but time is so tight, I can't do anything about it. It takes time to solve the case. Fu Yinsima slapped his hands and said in a deep voice, I'll beg Wei Gong personally and give me the file. Li Yuchen hesitated, I will go with you. The girl in the yellow skirt glanced at him and said Yan Ran, this is okay. With the great power that we honor, you two do not need to be held accountable by your Majesty. However, losing points in Wei Gong's heart is much more serious than being held accountable by your Majesty. She laughed, revealing 2 small white tiger teeth. The middle-aged man's face sank. A yeoman wearing soap clothes bowed his head, stepped forward quickly, and bowed and said, Master Fu Yin, the jailer reported to him, Su Pingzi's nephew Su Qian, just said that there are important clues about the tax and bank robbery, and want to meet the adults. The 3 eyes condensed at the same time. Su Qian. If I remember correctly, this is just a marginal figure who has nothing to do with the case. After the initial interrogation and torture, he was determined to be a miscellaneous person who has nothing to do with the case. Chen Fuyan pondered for a moment, and said, bring people here. Russian, wearing a prison uniform with dry blood on his body, Su Qian was brought up by the servants, and his handcuffs and ankles rattled while walking. P.S. As an 18-year-old newcomer to the first book, I feel very nervous. It's gone today, just 3 chapters. When Fang Fu stepped into the inner hall, he felt 3 sharp eyes cast on him. The person wearing the scarlet robe should be Fu Yin, embroidered with union, a member of the fourth rank, the uncle who has a silver gong embroidered on his chest, hey, is the organizer, I will go, this girl is good looking, she's so pretty, is she married? Swept his eyes and chest again, Su Qian calmed down a lot. Quickly lowered his head, showing a very humble attitude. Chen Fuyan sat high in the big chair, expressionless, with a majestic tone in interrogating the prisoner, Su Qian, when you went to prison 3 days ago, you didn't say that you had important clues. You know the consequences of concealing and not reporting. The old fritters in officialdom, even if you are in a hurry, never ask for clues, but put pressure on you. Being able to come here means that the plan has been half successful, and Su Qian is still calm. My lord, just now, Su Jia Erlang came to me, and I asked him for the file. Be honest first. All three of us knew about Su Zinian. It was not how famous he was, but as Su Pingzi's eldest son. The three organizers will naturally conduct investigations. How does this relate to the clue you mentioned? Chen Fuyan asked. The cattleman inferred the truth of the case from the file. Wait, Chen Fuyan interrupted him, leaning forward slightly, from the file. This is different from what he thought. I have solved the case. Su Qian nodded, saying that was the case. Chen Fuyan suppressed the idea of calling people to send this kid back to prison, with a serious face. You talk about it, but the officer reminds you that if you are stubborn, you can be separated by 200 boards. The robbery of the tax bank was not caused by a monster, but by man. One sentence surprised 3 people. Chen Fuyan slapped the table fiercely and shouted angrily, nonsense, come here, drag it down, and blame it for 200. The demon stealing tax and silver is almost a conclusive matter, and it is the consensus of the 3 sponsors. If I expected Su Qian to give valuable clues before, I am completely disappointed now. Is nothing more than the crazy paradox of the mounted boy jumping the wall. The middle-aged man's eyes lit up slightly, and he waved back the veteran who had rushed in, Master Chen, stay calm. He turned his gaze and stared at Su Qian, scorchingly, with scrutiny and anticipation, tell me. This Chen Fuyan was a bit irritable. Su Qian knew that it was time for him to act. According to the confession of the city gate guard, my second uncle entered the city at the 2nd quarter of Mao's hour. On Guangnan Street, a strange wind suddenly rose, and the horses rushed into the river in shock. He tried his best to make the tone of voice not humble or overbearing, to appear more calm, thereby increasing his persuasive power. Chen Fuyan nodded. This is the reason why we concluded that this is a monster hiding in the river, waiting for an opportunity to steal the tax and silver. No. Su Qian retorted loudly, the demon wind is only a blindfold, and the explosion in the river is also a blindfold. In fact, it is for you to ignore a flaw, a fatal flaw. Chen Fuyan urgently asked, what is the flaw? The middle-aged man made a listening gesture. The girl in the yellow skirt bit the candied fruit without chewing, her aura of eyes staring at Su Qian with interest. They read the file over and over many times, and they knew everything about the incident, but they didn't notice any flaws. My second uncle escorted 150,000 taels of tax and silver, dare to ask how many adults, 150,000 taels of silver, how many caddies? The middle-aged man had a stiff face, while the yellow skirt girl tilted her head and did not come back for a long time. Chen Fuyan said unyieldingly, just say what you have, don't sell it. Su Qian originally wanted to give a reminder to let a few adults investigate this huge flaw by themselves, but it seemed to be self-defeating. The quick calculation ability is a bit low, you ancient people, Su Qian immediately said, it's 9,375 caddies. According to the mass conversion formula of this world, 1 caddy of 16 taels and 150,000 taels of silver is 9,375 caddies. The middle-aged man frowned, he vaguely grasped something. The girl in the yellow skirt frowned, what does this mean? Her voice is as crisp as a silver bell. Means you are not too smart, AKO. Su Qian said, how far is the distance from the gate to Guangnan Street? The middle-aged man replied, 30 miles. How many downtowns did you pass on the way? 4. How's the journey? Horse. The middle-aged man suddenly widened his eyes and stood up abruptly. He stared his eyes vigorously, revealing a stunned expression of it turned out to be like this and it turned out to be like this. 3 days of tracking and hunting monsters have found nothing, and this experienced guard has realized that he might be in the wrong direction. But I didn't have a clear idea in my mind, so after I was denied before, I didn't care about it. Chen Fuyan's scalp is a bit numb, because he still hasn't heard what is wrong. It seems that his Fuyan is particularly unwise. Chen Fuyan glanced at the girl in the yellow skirt, feeling a lot of balance. The girl in the yellow skirt said depressed, where is the problem? The middle-aged man was a little excited, time is wrong. Guangnan Street is 30 miles away from Nanchinj Gate. Yu reading www.yuyuganshu.com has to pass through 4 downtowns along the way with horses and horses. It is impossible to reach Guangnan Street at the hour of the hour. He was influenced by preconceived ideas, thinking that it was a monster stealing tax and silver. After Su Qian's cocoon, he immediately chewed out the problem. But the tax and silver were indeed delivered to Guangnan Street at Chinchi. At that time, there were many people who saw horses rushing into the river, and it could not be fake. The girl in the yellow skirt said crisply. Chen Fuyan nodded with satisfaction, and echoed, what's the solution? This, the middle-aged man was stunned and looked at Su Qian subconsciously. Because the is not silver at all. Su Qian made a loud voice. Absurd. Chen Fuyan retorted, not to mention whether your second uncle and the soldiers had eyes or not. The file contains confessions from the people present at the time. The horses rushed into the river and the white silver rolled into the water. He shook the file in his hand, is this also fake? Seeing is not necessarily believing, Cao Min is willing to solve the puzzles for adults himself. He fixed his eyes on the table, borrow paper and pen for use. Chen Fuyan waved his hand and gestured to help himself. Su Qian dragged his shackles to the table, poured water and ground, spread out the rice paper, and began to write crookedly. My lord, please prepare something on paper according to Kamin's request. After finishing writing, he handed the rice paper to Chen Fuyan. Chen Fuyan took the rice paper and glanced at it, confused. Let me see. The girl in the yellow skirt came over to join in the fun, stretched out the white catkin to take the rice paper. And then confused. The middle-aged man Li Yuchen glanced at the paper and made an expressionless expression. He flattened the folded corner of the rice paper without leaving a trace, and then handed it to Chen Fuyan. A quarter of an hour later, 2 government officials brought the things in and placed them in the hall. The 3 adults scanned the equipment, then turned to look at Su Qian. Chen Fuyan said in a deep voice, all the things you want are here, please give me a satisfactory answer. His attitude has changed. Within a quarter of an hour, the official of the 4th grade had racked his brains for a long time, and had to admit that Su Qian's inference was reasonable, but there were still many doubts that have not been solved. For example, it is also true that the tax bank fell into the river. What is the mystery in it? He couldn't understand it. If Cao Min helped your lord to solve this case, can you write a letter to the saint to excuse my Su family from guilt? Dafeng attaches great importance to the inheritance of the father and the son. The sons live on behalf of the father, and they can also take the sins and make merits for the father. Nature. Chen Fuyan nodded. Su Qian nodded and squatted down in front of the appliance. The props in front of him were candles, salt, porcelain cups, and iron wires. What he wants to do is very simple, high school chemistry knowledge, extract sodium metal. In ancient times, it was impossible to extract this thing. There are 2 difficulties, electricity and the melting point of sodium chloride. But in this world, Su Qian knew that there was a profession that could do this. The 6th rank of the Sishanjian warlock, alchemist. Alchemists are a household name in Dafeng. Their various inventions and creations have long been integrated into the lives of ordinary people. Su Qian is not sure that the explosive tax silver must be metallic sodium. This is not important. What is important is to open up a way of thinking to explain the phenomenon of tax silver explosion. In the process of judging the case, bold assumptions and rigorous reasoning are necessary work in the early stage. The last thing is to verify and collect evidence. In his previous life, he had encountered a murder case that reminded him of vivid memory. The detectives opened their brains all night long based on clues and made speculations about the course of several cases. Based on this, they collected evidence. Then he overthrew everything and re-reasoned. Tax silver may not be sodium metal. In short, alchemists can do this. This is enough. Find the right direction for a few adults, this is what he has to do. When is in the right direction, you can follow the vines to investigate, and it is not difficult to find out who is behind the scenes. If you are still struggling with the mindset of monster chaos, the case will never be solved. Even if the case is solved in the future, he will already have the court send you away, thousands of miles away. He melted the coarse salt with water, and after stirring, he covered the mouth of the cup and poured salt water in slowly. After filtering, put the porcelain cup holder on the candle and stir it continuously with bamboo sticks. After a short while, the salt water in the cup evaporates to dryness, and the crystals that precipitate inside are sodium chloride. The essence is to further purify the salt. Chen Fuyan, a middle-aged man, and a girl in a yellow skirt with superb looks, the three stood on the sideline and watched intently. Su Qian raised his head and grinned at the girl in the yellow skirt. My lord is a disciple of Sishanjian. He noticed the feng shui plate around his waist. No one would use this thing except for the disciples of Si Tianjian. The girl in the yellow skirt made and said with a smile, my master is Sishanjian Zheng. The delicate and bright face of an egg, like a peeled egg, white and flawless. Jian Zhen's disciple, it doesn't matter what you breasts, Su Qian said softly, thank you, sister, melt these crystals for me. The melting point of sodium chloride is about 800 degrees Celsius. The girl in the yellow skirt slumped her small mouth. Fire control is the ability of an alchemist. I'm just a geomantic. But my master gave me a magical artifact. She turned her conversation, took off the feng shui plate on her waist, fiddled with the green jade fingers, entered the air machine, and the word fire lit up. Get back! Su Qian immediately backed away, and the next moment, the bright tongue spit out, flooding the porcelain cup. Stop! Su Qian immediately called to stop, then quickly inserted 2 iron wires into the porcelain cup, and asked, power on? No, it's mine. Pay attention to the control voltage. Well, this step is difficult, maybe it will fail many times. She turned the feng shui plate. The green jade finger lit up the word thunder, and several electric arcs flashed through the sky, touching the wire. ZZ, the molten sodium chloride undergoes a violent chemical reaction. Stop! Su Qian held his breath and leaned over to the mouth of the cup to see. A clump of bright silver metal was formed, with some unconverted crystals and impurities on the edge. Succeeded in one shot, the voltage was just right. Su Qian was pleasantly surprised. The electrolysis method produces metallic sodium, and the voltage is about 615 volts. He is prepared for repeated failures. I didn't expect the emperor to be possessed, it would be done once. Chen Fuyan and the middle-aged people couldn't wait to look over their heads. There was a pile of silver metal in the cup. At first glance, it looked quite similar to silver. Chen Fuyan's pupils shrank, and his heart was extremely shocked. Li Yuchen clenched his fists, staring at the silver metal block in a daze, as if lightning struck through his mind, splitting all the fog. A few adults, please take a look. Su Qian poured out the sodium metal, wrapped it in rice paper, and put it in his hands. This thing is much lighter than silver, but its appearance is very similar. If someone uses this thing to pretend to be silver, can it be fake? Several adults can also weigh it. He gave the sodium metal to Chen Fuyan. At this time, the color of sodium metal gradually turned dim, almost exactly the same as silver. The middle-aged man took it, and his eyes were shining, and he kept saying, "Sure enough, it's a lot lighter. If this thing is being transported, then it makes sense. Miss Plucking, you try." The girl in the yellow skirt took it, weighed it, and then stared at Su Qian strangely. Are you an alchemist?" "No, I am not, I am just a chemical porter." The scholar's thinking is more active. After the surprise, Chen Fuyan suddenly shook his head and said in a deep voice, "No, it's not right, even if the silver is replaced with this. What happened to the explosion? If it wasn't for the monster hidden in the river, the fake silver entered the water. How could it explode?" Su Qian didn't answer. He reached for the sodium metal, walked to the desk, and threw it into the pen washing tank. The blazing fire lights up, and thick smoke billows. Boom! The sodium metal reacted violently in the water, and the pen washing tank burst into fine cracks. This. Chen Fuyan was shocked. This fake silver will explode when it encounters water. Here can explain why after the silver falls into the water, Yu reading www.yuyuganshu.com will have such a fierce explosion. Su Qian explained. The middle-aged man murmured, "From the very beginning, we were misled. Through the explosion and the demon wind, the master behind the scenes made us think that it was a demon. The focus of the investigation was on tracking and hunting. It's no wonder that Qin Tianjian's qi-watching technique can't observe monsters." Su Qian added, "After the tax silver fell into the water, the soldiers only recovered more than 1,000 taels of silver. If you guessed correctly, these silvers were spread on the top layer for the purpose of concealing people's attention. Is tightly closed, all the anomalies are aligned." Su Qian. The middle-aged man's eyes were full of approval. "Okay, you are fine." His brows suddenly wrinkled, and Su Qian's slanted neckline solidified. Li Yuchen then patted his shoulders to help him pull the neckline neatly. Su Qian is flattered, this adult appreciates himself so much. Chen Fuyan frowned and said, "Since the silver is fake, where is the real silver?" The girl in the yellow skirt also showed a solemn color when she heard the words, "Tax and silver go out of the treasury and enter Beijing, and they will change hands at different levels. If you want to inquire about crimes, a large number of officials will go to jail. You must report to your Majesty's powers." Chen Fuyan nodded, that's what he meant. The middle-aged man had a different opinion, and his voice was low. The tax and silver were escorted all the way into Beijing and changed hands one after another. If it was fake, it would have been discovered long ago. The only possibility is that it was dropped recently. Chen Fuyan's eyes lit up, which greatly reduced the scope of investigation. "Come here, prepare the sedan chair quickly, the official is going to go." Chen Fuyan rushed out of the inner hall eagerly. Middle-aged men followed closely behind. Su Qian hurriedly shouted, "Master Fuyan, don't forget the promise to the grassroots." "Ning Yan." Su Pingzi was stunned. Li Ru's tears were still hanging on his face, his expression of joy solidified. 2 days ago, Su Qian clamored to see Fuyan in the prison, saying that there was an important clue to report, and then Lord Fuyan solved the case. According to the law, if you commit crimes and perform meritorious services, you will naturally be fine. The official said. "Yes, is that so?" Su Pingzi stammered. When Su Qian was a kitten, he took him home and raised him. He didn't know who his nephew was. Su Pingzi suspected that the staff was lying, but he had no evidence. "Is that rascal nephew?" Li Ru's were wrong pails. "Isn't the son dredging the relationship and saving the family? How could he be an unlucky nephew? Isn't he in prison?" With a lot of confusion, Su Pingzi led his wife and daughter out of the back door of the government office and saw Su Qian, who was combing the chicken coop's hairstyle and waiting at the door with anxiety. The moment I saw my nephew, the doubts buried in my heart were not important. The man from the martial arts background was filled with warmth, his eyes were red, and he strode forward. He wanted to give his nephew a hug, but felt hypocritical and couldn't let go. Face, patted his shoulder hard, Ning Yan, it looks good. Almost died on the spot without taking Su Qian. Second uncle, you are the pinnacle of Qi training, we are one grade. Su Qian said these words naturally, and they were not unfamiliar at all. He was surprised at the harmony, and at the same time, he passed Su Ersha's shoulder and looked at the three women behind him. Hey, auntie, you have the same embarrassed appearance as you are today, this idea emerges uncontrollably. The mood of gloating for misfortune did not last long, and was attracted by the beauty of the younger sister. The girl was wearing a loose prison uniform, her scattered temples hung over the classical and delicate face of melon seeds, and her tall nose. At first glance, she had a three-dimensional impression of a mixed-race beauty. This age is the most beautiful and innocent years, and the fusion has the charm that makes people unable to look away. Fuck, I actually have such a beautiful and refined sister. Su Qian was shocked. In the memory of the original owner, the appearance of the sister is very vague, probably not paying much attention. And because of my aunt, I hate the house, and the black is not very friendly to his cousin. Perceiving her brother's fiery eyes, Su Lingyu timidly shouted Big Brother, and lowered her head timidly. Big Brother! Hearing a scream suddenly. Su Lingyan was 5 years old, just such a small one, ran over, slammed in front of Su Qian, and looked at him with his head up. Su Qian waved his hand, without sugar for you, I just got out of prison myself. It is worth mentioning that the original owner doesn't like her cousin, but she treated this Yaomei pretty well, because Yaomei's appearance is finally not inherited from her mother. What is a cell? This is where you sleep these days. What about the other brother, did he bring any candy? He didn't come. Oh. Xiao was not disappointed. The other brother in her mouth was Su Xinian from a compatriot, but she still didn't know the difference between her cousin and her real brother. This young girl is not very clever, she is a stupid child, this must be inherited from her mother, the original owner thinks so. Finally, he looked at his aunt Li Ru, this woman who has always been arrogant in front of Su Qian, probably never expected in a lifetime that one day he would need to humbly thank his unlucky nephew. The beautiful woman turned her head stiffly, and said reluctantly, a lot, thank you Ninjian. At the right time, a vague memory appeared in Su Qian's mind. When was rushed to the courtyard next to Su's house by his aunt, Su Qian was angry and swore, Su Qian, will surely succeed in the future, don't regret it. It feels embarrassing to think about it now, this is not an aunt's version of Mo Chi Xiao Qiao. Su Qian now views the relationship between the original owner and his aunt from a third-party perspective. In fact, this beautiful woman is not entirely to blame. Su Qian practiced martial arts, eating more than 100 taels of silver every year, and this is equivalent to the savings of ordinary people for 20 to 30 years. It has to be a diligent family. It's not surprising that Auntie has resentment, so Su Qian said sincerely, Auntie, don't rush to thank you. When you go home for dinner, say it again. Li Ru immediately widened her Kazilan eyes, glaring at her unlucky nephew. Su Pingzi's scalp was numb, and he said solemnly, go home first. Su New Year, carrying a hip flask, staggered back to Su's house, where he had lived for 19 years, but now the door is sealed with a seal, and people go to the building, which is very desolate. Su New Year kicked the door open, stepped over the threshold, walked a few steps in, then turned back and closed the door. Suspended suicide is not a glorious thing, not to mention the decentness that a scholar like him should have, so the attention of the government cannot be called. Want a face? He walked from the outer courtyard to the inner courtyard, like a long life. Was literate at the age of 3, memorized poems at the age of 5, and was already familiar with the saints at the age of 10. Entered Yunlu Academy at the age of 14 to study. The 18-year-old Juren. It's not too much to say that you have a talent. His intelligence, his extensive knowledge and strong knowledge have shaped his proud character. He has always been proud in front of his family. He is promising, beautiful, and the pillar of the Su family in the future. As a 7-foot man, he is willing to die vigorously, and never live in humiliation. Thinking of this, Su Zinian drank the flask in his hand and smashed it to the ground. With a sense of wine, he rushed into the room, rubbed his ink, picked up his pen, and wrote the best farewell poem in his life. Su Zinian laughed 3 times, grabbed the rice paper, grabbed the door, took out the prepared hemp rope, and hung it on the ginkgo tree in the inner courtyard. He was surprised that he was facing death, and he was not afraid of it at all. He only felt that he had never had the joy before. Suddenly some understand those unruly mad Confucianism, only by being fearless, can he be proud of the world. I'm not afraid of death anymore, there is nothing in the world worth fearing. The capital is prosperous and is known as the best city in the world. Su Qian slowly walked through the lively ancient city, with cars like running water and horses like dragons, shops on both sides of the stream, and banners violently inspired by the wind. A poem could not help but pop up in my mind: smoke and willow painting bridge, wind curtain and green curtain, there are hundreds of thousands of houses. In fact, the capital is more prosperous than the Qiantang in the poem. Dafeng, geography records, in the early years of Yuan Jing, the population of Kyoto was more than 1.96 million. It is the 36th year of Yuan Jing. The population of the capital should have exceeded 2 million. UU reading www.uuganshu.com 3 in and 3 out of the Sufa compound, and raised 7 or 8 servants, but now the servants have already been repatriated, the gate is locked, and people go to the building. Ant looked at the plaque on the door, with mixed feelings. I don't know how the year is, he must be very worried for us. This child, before going to prison, said that he would save us. Said while walking in. The housing price in the capital is expensive, and the 3-entry compound costs 5,000 taels of silver. The down payment is 30%, which is 1,500 taels of silver. Bah, why do I still think about housing prices when I come to another world? Su Qian grinned. Su Pingzi said relievedly, I have been reading Sages and Sages in the new year, calm and reliable, I must be still running for us at this time. When he comes back, give him a surprise. Oops, Su Qian's expression changed, he knew that Su New Year was going to make a mistake. In the eyes of the second uncle and aunt, Su Erlang is determined, unsmiling, steady, and reliable, and is a tough scholar. Ha 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 ha, I promise the new year, life is a happy person, death is a ghost. Su New Year, talented, but God is unfair. If the sky doesn't give birth to me, I promise the new year, and I will be like a long night. The scholar standing on the chair under the ginkgo tree suddenly took off his hair crown and discarded it, shook his head vigorously, and shaved his head. He was wild, he put his head into the rope loop, and saw his family with stiff expressions and dull eyes. I promised New Year's unruly love for freedom, soon New Year's talents were so talented that heaven's injustice. One step too late. Me. Xiaonazi's face instantly turned red, and she was even more embarrassed from the eyes of her family. Her beautiful apricot eyes were covered with a layer of mist, and she was shining in the candle light. Although I prefer my sister, this kind of little girl who can cry for a long time with a punch is very cool to bully, Su Qian thought. Su Lingye bulged her cheeks, raised her head like a smashed jar, and looked at Su Qian. I just want to know how the eldest brother solved the case from the file. Su New Year, who pretended that he did not exist, could no longer pretend, and silently raised his head. He prides himself on being smart, and he has read the dossier, but after repeated research, he has no clue. But after Su Qian asked him for the file that day, he solved the case immediately. Ant did not make a statement, but the chopsticks holding the dishes stopped chewing the food. There is no perfect crime in the world, except for coincidence. Any man-made case can find clues. Su Qian said. Su New Year could not help but straightened his waist and listened carefully. First of all, I escorted the tax and silver journey. The weight of the silver detected the tax and silver problem. Su Qian recounted his reasoning process. The more I listen to the New Year, the brighter my eyes are, just like getting my husband's answers in a private school. His hands on the bottom of the table were clenched into fists. When Su Qian finished speaking, Su Erlang's face was nothing but such a calm expression, not bad. Su Jiajiro has always been wrong, and the family has long been used to it. The beautiful 16-year-old sister lowered her head and hid the admiration in her eyes. Su Pingzi slapped the table with excitement, using slang to curse and swear word. It turns out to be like this, I didn't even notice it. Su New Year glanced at Lao Zi, and said to his heart, it is strange that you can find out. Su Qian glanced at his second uncle, and remembered a sentence, but I am illiterate, and I am a stubborn man. The second uncle is a martial artist, and his literacy is limited to writing his own name, and the writing is crooked, like chicken feet. You rough, you can't even weigh. Aunt diss her husband. Su Qian asked, did they wear a handguard when they counted their money? Su Ershi recalled for a moment. Surprised, it seems there is, how did you know? Really sodium metal? Su Qian looked at him quietly, why didn't you say in the confession? What can I say about trivial things? At this point, Su Ershi scolded and said, it is all blamed on Lu, who handed me a pot of sweet-scented osmanthus honey at the time. You also know that my second uncle's drinking capacity is unfathomable, so I was greedy for a cup. I drank a bit and didn't care much about the others. I forgot if you didn't say it. I am most afraid of pig teammates like you. If there is this in the file, I can analyze the truth of the case faster. Why bother to dye so many brain cells? Su Qian sighed. In my second uncle's opinion, this may be the same as what other people wear and what hairstyle they wear. He didn't even realize that this was a worthy doubt. In this way, the surname Lu in Dad's mouth is the person who framed Dad in all likelihood. Su Zinian pointed out sharply. I blamed me for being confused and almost harmed the whole family. Su Pingzi was suddenly a little sad. Ning Yan, your father and I fought back in the mountain and sea battle back then, and said that we would survive together and fly together. I survived, but your father died in battle. At that time, I thought, if you want to live better, you have to change your way of life. Can no longer be cannon fodder. So I let Nianer go to school, and chose to let you practice martial arts. In fact, I still have selfish intentions. Aunt rolled her eyes and said, yes, my heart is with my nephew. More than 100 taels of silver a year. Listen to my aunt, Erlang is not a deer. Su Qian swears that this is definitely not what he wants to say, but instinct surpasses the brain. The original master has a lot of resentment towards his aunt. You little bad guy, what do you mean by saying this? Anta patted the table angrily. Su Erlang and Su Lingya bow their heads and grill rice, they seem to be used to them. Su Ersha's scalp tingling, that's enough, I finally got my life back, and I have to listen to you quarrel, it's better to die. Everyone bowed their heads to eat. Speaking of the battle of mountains and seas, Su Qian was somewhat impressed. The world is vast and boundless, and the Dafeng dynasty dominates the central plains, calling the world orthodox. Great honor to establish the country by military and govern the country by Confucianism. At its peak, all nations came to Korea. So far, Kuazuo has stretched for 600 years. 20 years ago, Dafeng joined forces with countries in the western regions to fight against the grass barbarians in the north and the southern barbarians in the southwest at Shanhaiguan. All parties have joined the war pawns, reaching millions. From the beginning of the war to the end, it took only half a year, and 1 million lives were annihilated in half a year. Is one of the worst wars in history, known as the Battle of Mountains and Seas. Su Qian's father died in that war. With my keyboard man's knowledge and the law summed up by the street stall literature, no dynasty can escape the 300-year law. The so-called 300-year law was named by Su Qian himself. As a pseudo-historical lover, he summed up a set of laws from the 5,000-year history of the previous life. Leaving aside the vassal princes in their own affairs, the ignorant and backward Zhou dynasty did not mention it. There was no national fortune in a dynasty that lasted 300 years. The Song and Han dynasties were also reorganized dynasties. Thinking about it, the Dafeng dynasty followed the world for 600 years. Yu reading www.yuyuganshu.com should be related to the power system of this world. Xiao Doubting was brought back by Lu. She was hungry and stopped crying. She was too small to reach the dining table. She sat on Lu's lap and was fed by her. Mother, why do we live in a dark house? We can't eat enough every day. Xiaoduding remembered what happened to him the other day. She called the big prison a black house. The people at the table did not speak, and the aunt showed a look of pity. Su Ersha sighed, Daddy did something wrong. Xiao Doubting said oh, and then said, I woke up from hunger yesterday and caught a bug. There is this on my head. She put 2 short fingers on her head. That is a cockroach, and the mouse is called 2 big ground snakes in the cell. The faces of all the people at the table have changed, both ashamed and pity. It is their failure to make a child suffer this kind of suffering. You have eaten. Li Ru's lips trembled and her eyes were red. She gave birth to this young girl in her early 30s. Although she was a little stupid, she loved her. Xiaoduding Su Lingyan said crisply, I later heard the scream of my mother's belly. The atmosphere was silent for a while, and everyone's hearts sank. Auntie's pretty face turned pale, and she trembled, then I stuffed my mother's mouth, and my mother is eating soon. Xiaoduding said with an inviting expression. Auntie shook her body. Su New Year slowly put it on the bowl and chopsticks, I'm full. Su Lingyu, me too. Su Qian, I'm full, ku ku ku. Su Ershu. Aunt stayed for a few seconds, then fluttered to the bottom of the table, oh. Oh oh oh. Soon after, the cries of the young kid slaughtering pigs echoed in the night sky. The night sky is like washing, dotted with stars. The tallest building in Dafeng, the Guanxing building, the office of the Sishanjian. The girl in the yellow skirt climbed up lightly. When she passed the 7th floor, she heard a loud noise coming from the Dan room. A group of alchemists in white, quarreling with red faces. Why failed again? Obviously such a simple step. I said, it must be the wrong dose of salt. No, I think it's water. It's fire? Just now I saw senior brother Wan boil the salt. It's too difficult, the alchemy of turning salt into silver is too difficult, I can't. The girl in the yellow dress named Kwei twitched her mouth, and muttered, these people are still making fake silver. 2 days ago, she brought back the story of turning salt into silver to Si Tianjian, and the seniors began to believe it. Can salt become silver? 3-year-old children didn't believe it. But soon, the tax and silver case was solved. His Majesty felt that the counterfeit silver was very powerful and quite mysterious, and ordered Qintian supervisor to refine the counterfeit silver. So, the alchemists of the Qin Tianjian started the work of exploding the liver, and devoted themselves to the blessing of 996 day and night. From 2 days ago, until now, he has been defeated and defeated repeatedly. Kwei, it is junior sister Kwei. Someone shouted excitedly. In an instant, the haggard faces turned around, and the eyes suddenly lit up. Sister Kwei, how did you make this fake silver? Sister Kwei, come and help me see if there is a problem with the steps. You are the only one who has successfully refined fake silver. Surrounded the girls in the yellow skirt. Chu Kwei had to enter the alchemy room to watch the process of refining fake silver by the seniors. Failed again. A white-clothed alchemist who operated on site lamented. Sister Kwei, where is the problem? Zhong Bai put on and humbly asking for advice. There is no problem. I did it in this way. Chu Kwei pondered, this is the alchemy passed down in ancient times. It is profound and obscure. It does not mean that it is learned by learning. It requires profound and simple teaching before it can be deeply rooted. I teach. Brothers, please remember this formula. The brothers put on a listening posture. Hydrogen, helium, lithium, beryllium, boron, carbon, nitrogen, oxygen, fluorine, neon, sodium, magnesium, aluminum, silicon, and phosphorus. Chu Kwei was lucky to Danshan, spitting out this amazing formula word by word. This tactic is reconciled. The brothers are not aware of the strength, and they understand every word, and they are confused when they are combined. I don't know what it is. Chu Kwei pretended to smile deeply. Wizard, wizard, the person who wrote this formula is really a wizard of alchemy. A white-clothed senior said with emotion. Where is the wizard, brother? Don't think about it. Chu Kwei's smile remained unchanged. Sister Kwei, who told you this formula? Did you meet an expert in alchemy and get some advice? Chu Kwei said heartily, good question. Throwing the pot out lightly. That person's name is Su Qian, the nephew of Su Pingzi in the 7th grade green robe of Yudaying. You are looking for him. When I heard that I was a taker, the white clothes were unhappy. Joke, I'm a superintendent, and I have a lot of talents. Do I need outsiders to refine fake silver? And I'm still a taker. Isn't it a joke to spread it out? According to different practice systems, several very interesting chains of contempt have been formed. Daemon looked down on Buddhism, but Buddhism despise it. The warlock looked down on the wizard looked down on the Gu master, and the Gu master looked down on the warlock. Then, the Taoist wizard and Gu master looked down on the martial artist together. As for Confucianism, I'm sorry, and with all due respect, everyone here is rubbish. But modern Confucianism has weakened. Sister Kwei, come and guide us. Plucking O said, it must be next time. She forcibly squeezed out of the group of seniors in white clothes, and continued to climb up the steps. Actually, she doesn't understand either. Last time at the government office, he made fake silver in one go. Afterwards, Cai Wei tried again in private, but failed. Completely copied the previous process, but it failed, and she didn't know why. The roof of the Guanxing building is not a normal canopy roof, but an octagonal platform, which is in harmony with gossip. Is therefore called Baguatai. On the edge of the Bagua terrace, an old man in white, lying in front of the case, holding a wine glass in his hand and his head in the other, looking drunk or not, looking at the capital below. The girl in the yellow skirt didn't bother me with interest. Master doesn't do business on weekdays, so she likes to sit at the gossip table and drink and watch the scenery. I still don't like being disturbed. Squinted his eyes and said to concentrate on the world. Is plucking coming? The old man in white smiled. Master. The girl in the yellow skirt smiled, trotting over, standing on the edge of the gossip, her skirt flying. What reward does the emperor old man have? A few hundred taels of silver, a few satin pieces. The girl in the yellow skirt said, Master, what exactly is fake silver? I don't know how to be a teacher. There are still things in the world that the master doesn't know. Too much, too much. The white-clothed old man smiled and said, Master doesn't know where the thieves went 19 years ago. You always say that the little thieves 19 years ago are hateful, but you don't tell me who they are and what they stole." The white-clothed old man got up, stood on the edge of the octagonal platform, and sighed, "What I stole is incredible." "Then do you know who made the fake silver?" Sishanjian is the birthplace of the sorcerer system. Alchemists in the world, even if they are not born as Sishanjian, must have a connection with Sishanjian. Behind the tax and silver case, there was an alchemist who participated in it, and he made such a strange thing, which is by no means a general generation. Being a teacher naturally knows. Small courtyard, main house. Su Qian was lying on the bed, staring at the crisscross beams through the bright moon coming through the window. He was worried about his future, a little horrified, and a little excited. With the high-quality products produced by my 9-year compulsory education, all the knowledge in my mind is hanging. Can easily stand out in the backward monarchy society and become the most beautiful flower. However, a society with the supremacy of imperial power often means that human rights cannot be guaranteed. This is a phenomenon that makes any modern person feel sad. Thinking about it, Su Qian fell asleep, and when it was bright when he woke up, he wore a black tolerance suit, fastened his belt, tied his long hair, and then hung the pudeo around his waist. The body is straight, masculine, and handsome. I have to admit that ancient clothing has a bonus to appearance and temperament, but it is too troublesome to go to the toilet. Over the wall and went to the second uncle's house for breakfast. The uncle and nephew went out to work together. Su Ping's Higuan resumed his post. Everything is as usual. Chang'an County office is Fukuo County in the capital. The yamen is in the city, 6 or 7 miles away from Su's house. Su Qian has no horses or carriages, so he had to take the number 11 bus and arrive at the county office in 2/4 of an hour. Chang'an County government sits north and south, and at the door there are 2 stone lions of the same height. On both sides of the red-brown painted door, there are drums with peeling paint. The structure of the county government is worth talking about. The largest is of course the magistrate, called the chief official. He has 2 deputies, one is the county chief and the other is the chief official. These 3 are high-ranking imperial order officers, and they were established in Su Qian's time. Under the 3 imperial officials, there are classic history, also known as chief officials. But there is no grade, not influx. Then there are 3 classes and 6 rooms. The 3rd class is the soap class, the fast class, and the strong class, responsible for ceremonies, public security, arrests, etc., and the 6 rooms correspond to the court 6. Su Qian is in the fast squad, and he is called the catch fast. Entered the yamen, and it happened that the official was at the point. Li Dianji, who was standing in front of the hall, saw Su Qian with a simple knife on the waist and was taken aback. That expression, as if Qing Tian saw a ghost in the day. The servants noticed that the leader's look was wrong, and they turned their heads to look at them, and then they also had the same expressions. Su Qian, are you a man or a ghost? Someone trembled. Li Dianxi noticed the shadow cast by Su Qian on the ground, his heart was slightly relieved, and his tone was calm. What nonsense is said in the courtroom, do ghosts have shadows? Everyone heard the words, Chi breathed a sigh of relief. Su Qian thought for a while, then said, it can't be a walking dead. Li Dianxi was shocked, and all the government officials were nervous. Su Qian hurriedly clasped his fists, just kidding, I have seen Master Dianxi, colleagues, I am out of prison. Li Dianxi asked, what's the matter? Su's family was imprisoned because of the tax and silver case, they heard about it. Naturally, it is to redeem the merits, to perform the merits, to be tolerant of the saints, and to forgive the guilt of the Su family. Su Qian immediately repeated the matter, but passed the credit to the second uncle and took out the certificate given by the Jingzhou mansion. At the same time, I also know in my heart. Although the tax bank has been found, the judgment has not been finalized. That is to say, the case of missing tax bank has not been settled. After all, it has to go through the process, not so fast. Therefore, the bureaucrats in Changle County still don't know about it. When is over, a few familiar catches come up immediately. Yu reading www.yuyugonshu.com. Congratulations! Ninjian, you can treat yourself to a drink. In this era, when you call friends, you don't use words or names. When introducing yourself, use names without words. Yes, if you don't die in a catastrophe, you will have a blessing, you have to treat. I heard that the Gulan in Linshui Street bought a new batch of clean people. Ning Yan, go with us tonight. It's okay to entertain guests and drink. The sleeping woman wants me to ask. It's too much. Su Qian just wanted to shirk and said that he had no money. Suddenly, he stepped on a hard bump under his feet. He looked down and found that it was a grain of silver. Is it really a disaster if you don't die? He immediately stepped on, calmly, pretending to look at the scenery everywhere. Waiting for everyone to take a few steps forward, Su Qian quickly lowered his head and picked up the money bag with his face unchanged. After walking through the promenade and sitting in the side hall on the west side for a few minutes, Li Dianshi came in with a gloomy face and looked at Wang Catch's head. Old Wang, the county magistrate let us go to the inner hall. Wang Tuta's expression turned bitter, and he went out without saying a word. Su Qian watched Wang Data disappear from the back, and asked, "What's the matter? The boss's face is not very good. You have been in prison for the past few days. There was a murder case in Kongping Street. The man who died was a wealthy merchant." The county magistrate was furious, and every day he caught Wang Shu and cursed him. It's just that a merchant has died, the county magistrate doesn't need to be furious. Su Qian nibble on the seeds. Since ancient times, human life has been a major case, but as the magistrate of Fukuo County in the capital, from the 5th grade, it is not like this. Oh, the merchant has a relationship with an adult in the affair. I think it is the pressure from that side. The servant said, and, this year is the year of the boxer. Gengzi Nian. Su Qian did not react. Beijing Cha. The Yaya pointed out.